Find the pointiest thing you can, put it on the longest shaft that you can, you're good. You can win War 1. Just... Alex, one of the things that I do when I go on to the vacation is typically bring along some of my hiking gear so that I can go into the mountains, which is something you never get to do up here in New England.
Oh, and yeah, New Hampshire is not known for its mountains at all.
No, we're not known for hiking, so I take it with me when I go down there. But anyway, since I was in the Berkshires, I ended up going up Monument Mountain. Something I did last year, did again this year. There are some nicer, easier strolls that you can take. I did not get to do any of those this time, mostly because of rain and time frame, but we did get up to Monument Mountain. On Monument Mountain, there is something called the Devil's Pulpit, which I did not do this year. I did go out there last year. It's kind of a dangerous thing to do because you get up to the top of the mountain. There's a very cool thing that looks like almost a throne that's at the top, which is the pulpit itself. But if you want to look out over the cliffside, it's basically a straight drop. Point of the matter is that, like, I tried to take a picture facing down, but you're kind of, like, on a slope, and I had to prop myself up with a couple of trees to, like, try and take a picture down, realizing that if I make a wrong move, that will be a real total pebble knockdown.
That's how we lose hikers.
That's a total person knockdown right there. That's going to be bad.
Total person calamity.
Because I have absolutely no way of grabbing onto anything on the way down. But Monument Mountain is not the trickiest mountain that I've gone up. It is definitely not as rough as some of the ones around here, but it did get me thinking about the idea of difficult terrain, because that is something that in D&D it's a thing. You have travel, and then you have certain terrains that you're going through, and some of them are difficult to traverse. And
yeah,
usually the basic mechanic of that is that it takes more time to get through difficult terrain. You move at like half speed when you get into difficult terrain. But personally, I just feel like that's very simplistic when you actually look at what difficult terrain is. Difficult terrain...
Yeah, it's a very simplified view of it.
Yes. And I feel like you could probably do more with it, or at least try to explain it better, and maybe prepare your party better for it. Or give them certain things that they could do to make it easier. Like, for instance, we're going up a mountain. So what are you going to need for a mountain? If you have proper mountaineering equipment, it's probably not going to be as difficult as if you decide to go, like, with your jogging shorts on. And just take a nice leisurely stroll up the mountain. You're probably not going to be prepared for that. And you have to...
Well, it also determines if you're on a trail or if you're bushwhacking.
If you're bushwhacking, yeah. And if you have the tools necessary to actually do the bushwhacking, that's also... Are you
wearing armor while you're going through the bushes, too?
Oh,
because that'll slow you down.
That will definitely slow you down. Can you imagine getting the branches getting under your half plate? It's getting all up in there. You get into mud, like almost like quicksand, and you're in heavy armor. That's gonna be fun for you. Yeah, at a certain point, you're better off trying to slide down the mountain in your armor.
Maybe. I don't think it'll protect you if you fall off a cliff, though.
No, fall damage is definitely still going to be a thing. So I'm kind of imagining the idea of, like, you're going up into the mountains, something like that. And you have your party in there, and now you have to think about not just, like, okay, it's difficult terrain, you're going to be moving slower through it, but obstacles that they're going to encounter. Environmental ones that you're going to encounter. Are you sure-footed when you get out there? And are you prone to slipping? Fall damage is still a thing in D&D. Maybe not if you're playing the Star Wars RPG, but definitely in the D&D context.
Well, I think for what you're talking about with difficult terrain like this, and using it effectively, a lot of times I feel like the game doesn't really give you a reason for it. It's kind of just a time sink. Occasionally it's dangerous and can do damage, but it's not really... thing that's spent a lot of time on, and I think for what you're talking about, you could almost make the terrain its own encounter.
I guess that's kind of what I'm wondering, is if we could turn the environment itself almost into an encounter. Like, instead of just having monsters be your encounter, have an actual event happen.
You're climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
And there are all these events that are going to happen, all these things you have to overcome, that have different difficulties, kind of like fighting different monsters. So maybe this is a scramble, a rocky climb. Maybe this one's a cliff. Maybe this one's full of thorns. Maybe this one's full of poison ivy.
Yeah.
All these different things. You could do a whole encounter that is based on several hours of traversal through terrain. Maybe there is a monster in there too. Maybe you get attacked by a pack of wolves.
Yeah.
Or something. Or maybe you disturb a bear.
Yeah. Here's a thought that I had that would be really interesting. I think it would be a one-shot. I don't think you would make a campaign around this. But if you had, like, a mountain adventure where there's an artifact at the top of the mountain. Maybe it's even a dragon. Maybe it's a dragon's roost at the top of the mountain.
Why would I be going to that?
Because it's a massive treasure. The dragon's sitting on a massive treasure at the top of the mountain.
And how am I supposed to get that off the mountain?
You're gonna work that out later.
Oh, okay.
But the point is that you are on a timetable. I want to say that, like, it's because the dragons are away, and they're gonna be returning, and they're gone for, like, so many hours. Like, you've tracked them every day, and so that you know that they're gone for X number of hours. So now you gotta get up to the mountain, and you gotta get their treasure in this allotted amount of time. So everything that you're doing takes time. And if you fail at, like, athletic checks, or fortitude checks, or you eat something you're not supposed to eat, this is going to add to your time frame. Not just your basic stats, but also it's going to do a time sink. So it's going to be harder to get there at the top. And if you don't get there in time, the dragons come back and burn your whole party alive.
Right. So the fun part is you didn't realize that every day while you watched it, the dragon that was leaving come back, different dragons?
Oh.
So you only see one leave and one come back, and one leave and one come back. You think it's just one dragon, but really they just take turns.
Oh,
so you get up there, and inside the lair is still a dragon.
It's still a dragon. So you have to, like, establish something at the very beginning that, like, you've had somebody with a spyglass watching the ruse to see that there's no dragons there at a certain time of day or something like that. You have to do that, because if they don't do that, then yeah, there's just always a dragon up there. They're taking shifts.
One still leaves. You can't tell the difference. They look like dragons to you.
Maybe, and they're all going to be the same color, because chances are black dragons and red dragons and gold dragons aren't sharing the roost.
Good luck on your knowledge dragons and your perception check on that one to make the difference between one dragon and the other.
Do you have dragon knowledge? Because you need dragon knowledge for this. I don't even know what check that would technically be. If that would be a lore or check or history, maybe.
Knowledge dragon.
Nature. It would probably be a nature check, maybe.
Probably nature.
Okay. But anyway, so...
Dragonology.
Yeah, dragonology. You need dragonology every single day. The point of the matter is that we'll just take on faith that the dragons are gone for a certain amount of time. You need to get up there. So time becomes a factor. And so if you end up engaging with, like, the wolves, for instance, you can figure out your rounds of combat, and that's going to take so much time. But then, how do we figure out what to do when you get, like, into a rock slide? Like, what does that actually take? How much time does that take? These are questions that I think are worth asking for an adventure like this. For our hiking D&D adventure. I suppose the easiest way to figure this out is we could start with just the difficult terrain kind of rule of, like, it taking twice as long to get through an amount of, a space. Figure out the actual distance that you have to travel, and so that you kind of have a baseline of how much time it's going to take. And then anything that slows you down takes time out of that as well. And if you slip down or you fall back or something, you have another distance to cover. So you now have kind of like a basic set of rules of how much time it takes to do everything. But you'd kind of have to set up an encounter where, like, okay, rock slide comes down, you have a total pebble knockdown. The rock slide comes down, buries your party, and everything like that. And you kind of have to know how much time it's going to take. If they fail at these things, or fail to get, like, out of them quickly, if you don't have a strength check that allows you to get the rocks off of you, you'd want to know that, and how long it takes, not just, like, if you're going to die from the health mechanism. We're putting in a whole time frame mechanism, like a race.
Yeah, that would be annoying. Doing time is always one of those things people tend to not keep track of as well of.
Right.
I think in D&D or in games like that.
Yeah.
Like, what day of the month is that? I don't know. It's been like, what, a week? Who knows?
That's why I say that this would have to be a one-shot. This is like an experiment you do for a night to see how long it takes. Or if you can actually get up there in the time frame. Your boss battle is literally just the mountain itself.
Yeah, and then the mountain becomes alive because it's really just a titan.
Now what we're doing is we're just making Shadow of the Colossus.
Perfect.
So basically
Everyone loved that game.
Shadow of the Colossus, or the newer version, Pray for the Gods. We played that on stream. Actually, I did. But at any rate, same basic principle. Climb up the giant boss, because the actual dungeon is the boss. But yeah, now we've made the mountain into... The mountain was just a giant mimic. It's a...
Right.
It's a mount mic. It's a mimton. Mimount?
Anyways.
I think it would be really interesting to think about these, wild terrains having more to them than just being longer to traverse than they were before, and to be able to even have environmental hazards and considerations to take into place, even when you get into combat. Because you have to think, like, I'm in a swamp, that's probably going to affect combat when a bunch of goblins come at me. And it's going to affect it for them as well as for me. And if I'm in heavy armor, it's going to affect me more, probably.
They're waist deep in a swamp right now.
Yeah, I'm waist deep in a swamp right now. How am I swinging this sword at the goblin? Maybe there's combat rules for difficult terrain. Maybe you don't get, like, bonus actions when you do that. You
barely get any actions.
Your bonus action is free your hand from swamp water. And it has to be in order to swing your sword. You have to have specific bonus actions, help and aid and all of those that you have to utilize just so that you can do combat in this environment. Especially, caves. Caves are a great example of this, because if you think about it, a lot of caves, how are you swinging a sword?
In a tight cave, you're not.
Yeah.
You're stabbing with it.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a thing online not too long ago where they were showing these, like, small corridors, and they're like, you can't fight in these things. I can't swing a sword down here. You're gonna try to throw an axe in here? No, the best you can hope for is to poke with a spear. That's the best thing you can do. I can't deflect with a shield. How am I getting a shield around here in these tight corridors?
I mean, to be fair, spears are superior because they require 0 training.
Spears are also superior because it's basically just point and click.
Yeah. And they have range. The sword does not.
Yeah, I find in a lot of survival games, I usually end up with spears as my primary... the primary thing I use anyway, for those very reasons. And I think a lot of, like, those survival crafting games prioritize spears without even understanding it. As being superior to...
I don't know, off topic entirely, but I don't know why games like survival games go, hey, make a sword. It's like, no, you would not be making swords.
I'm making a spear.
You'd be making nothing but spears.
Yeah. 1, they're much easier to make. 2, they have range. And 3, you could also use them as a throwing weapon. So,
Swords...
Just make spears. Yeah.
Back in ye old days, swords were used as a more of a kind of, hey, my station is that I have a sword. This is an expensive weapon and requires you know how to use it properly.
Right.
And spears were like peasant weapons that you didn't really need training to use and could just kind of sharpen whatever and make a spear.
Just get your pitchfork.
You know,
it's
Yeah,
essentially that.
yeah. But
As
like
long a
spear
handle as
fighting,
can.
if you're trained at spear fighting though,
Yeah. It's very
Like-
effective.
fuck your swords.
Yeah, exactly. You will not be able to hit me with the sword before I poke you with my spear.
Yeah, most likely not.
Yeah. Basically, just
Especially
find the pointiest thing you can, put it on the longest shaft that you can. You're good. You can win.
Lance.
War 1. Just. I guess our point is, if you're going up a mountain or you're going into a swamp, make sure you bring a spear with you.
Pretty much.
Just get spears. Why are we even bothering with swords anymore?
Oh, because people like their swords.
They like
They
sword and
especially
board. Sword and board.
They
yeah.
especially like their katanas for some reason.
They like their katanas because it seems fun. But
Here's another off-topic thing. Back in the old days of D&D, katanas or bastard swords had to be masterwork only, so they cost extra because I think the thought process in that was that they were only ever made by master smiths.
they kind of had to be.
But in like real history, yeah, they were only ever made by master smiths because Japan was a pretty iron poor country, and the way that they had to make the swords was by introducing more carbon into it and basically making carbon steel.
And folding it over and over and over again, which was a very laborious process, because otherwise
Yeah,
the swords
and it
would not
wasn't-
be very strong. Yeah.
It was not because they were like, oh, we're special, we're folding the sword 1,000 times. It was
No,
no, because if
you
we
have
don't do
to.
this, the sword will break.
Yeah, the sword would not work very well at all. So yeah, they had to do this
Because
very complicated
They had to
process.
add the carbon into it, and make
Yeah.
carbon steel, and then they had to pound out all the impurities.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so you know,
fine. You
yes,
can
they
have
were
your-
made by masters because they had to be made by masters.
So
Because
basically,
if it was not, it
yeah.
was a cheap ass sword.
So basically, if you want your katana in D&D, I have to know who you found that could make it, and I want to know if you have enough money to buy it, because realistically, it's going to
Well,
cost
in
some
D&D,
cash.
you could have a katana
Sure,
because it's not iron poor.
sure.
Those again, like, more side notes. I have wanted to run or make a world for like D&D that was iron poor mostly,
Mhm.
because it would mean you have alternate materials to use.
Oh
Then
yeah,
iron.
yeah. You'd probably
You've got
start
your-
using stone and bone and products
Stone,
like this.
bone, brass, bronze, copper.
Yep. Those
Um,
would be good. Obviously,
things like
wood.
that.
You know.
Wood, but
Wood.
you know, you'd have other metals that are not as strong as iron, or you could have pig iron, for instance.
Mm, Yep.
Anyways,
Whatever
these
you
are totally
do.
off the topic, though.
yeah, exactly. Ooh, obsidian.
Obsidians are
If you
pretty-
have obsidian around, you definitely want to be using that.
yeah, I mean, it's brittle, but it's sharp as fuck.
Yeah, going back to that whole ancient civilization thing that we're talking about, was it the Mayans? I want to say it was the Mayans. Mayans used obsidian a lot,
And
what,
jade.
yeah, what they had obsidian. So, what they would say is, the thing about obsidian is that it's very sharp and it doesn't dull. Like, as long as you're not getting it chipped, they found it from like hundreds of years ago, and they pull it out, and you can still cut yourself on on the obsidian blades that they made because it's
Yeah,
incredibly
it's
sharp.
volcanic glass.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna dull.
yeah, it's going to be very, very strong. So as long as you don't try to fight a mountain, like we're apparently making into a monster here, you're probably okay. So basically, we're saying get a spear with an obsidian head on it, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Maybe it's volcanic glass because it's red dragons at the top of this mountain.
Well, if they have a breath weapon hot enough to melt boulders.
They can if they really believe.
Are we good on this topic?
Yeah, we're fine. Yeah, we're fine. We've gone off like on 3 different tangents. That's usually the maximum I allow for these, so that's good. Anyway, if you have some ideas on how we could make difficult terrain more interesting in your role-playing experience, please let us know in the comments down below. Okay.
Or if you have an encounter that is in mountain or other terrain.
Do you want to fight a
Let us know.
mountain? Do you want to fight a mountain?